You ready to go?
Yeah, ready.
Well, welcome to the show, and it's optimized by Pure Sport Now, and that's how we got to know each other as well. But I want to go way back before the international rugby player I get to speak to now and understand your route was a bit different. You ended up out in South Africa before you kind of came back here.
Yeah, I suppose I didn't take the conventional route into pro rugby. It wasn't really pro rugby wasn't really on my horizon at the end of my sort of schooling. I didn't make it into an academy straight off the bat, and so I kind of had options. I could have gone to university, but I also wasn't really ready for that. So I actually decided to take a gap year out in South Africa. It wasn't I wasn't just traveling. I had a job out there. But I mean, long story short, I ended up staying there for 5 years. Worked my way up through the rugby chain, played amateur club rugby, university rugby, and eventually got a professional contract off the back of it.
Yeah, I've heard you say before that you had a bit of a stooges job.
Yeah,
when you moved out there. What did that entail?
So it's kind of like, it's a gap student is often called in the UK, but you're just a dog's body. You get told what to do by the teachers. I was working at a prep school, so there were 4 of us, me, another guy who'd come from England, an Australian guy and a Kiwi guy. And we all lived in this tiny little flat at one end of the boarding house. So it was kind of our job to just be around and just help out. So in the morning, we'd get told to go and wake up the boarders, make sure they're getting down to breakfast on time, and then across to their lessons. And then throughout the day, we'd just be on hand to do whatever, if it was going to make 200 copies of some homework, or just doing stuff around school. And then in the afternoon, we'd coach sport. So it was pretty fun, to be fair. There wasn't a lot of responsibility. I mean, we got paid pretty much nothing, but we were living in the school, so we had all our meals. So it was great.
And sometimes it's a chance to grow up as well. I think you saying there that I wasn't ready to go to university. Yeah. It's the same for so many of us at 17, 18. We don't know whether we're what we're up to, heads or tails. It could be anything.
Exactly. I felt so much pressure on people being like, do you know what you want to do? What job do you want to get when you're older? I still don't know. I'm lucky that I ended up in rugby, because it was the one thing I thought I was good at. Yeah, genuinely, I don't know. I just hope I never grow up. But yeah, it was always a tricky one, and there was obviously, that's not the same for everyone. Some people knew exactly what they wanted to do, or they at least knew what they wanted to study at university, where they wanted to go. But when we were applying for unis, I had no idea. I didn't know which one I wanted to do. They were like, "Oh, focus on the course you want." I was like, "Well, I don't know what course I want either." I enjoyed being at school. I loved school. But I think I had no sort of real passion for any subject or any vocation out of that. I think I was still very much, I want to enjoy playing rugby. I enjoyed all sport, but rugby was my main one. The fact that I wasn't sort of straight out of school into an academy was really disappointing, but I guess I just kept plugging away over in a different country.
What did that look like then? Because I suppose there's that level of discouragement where you maybe don't get picked up by, I think you were based down south, so you don't get picked up by a Harlequins or a Saracens or a whoever. And then when you go away, what kind of level are you playing at when you first get there?
So when I first arrived in South Africa, one of the teachers at school was, he was involved coaching the under-20s at a local club called False Bay. So we ended up going down there, me and the other guys, and that was a decent standard. It was good because it was guys who were maybe a year or two older than me. I was 18, fresh out of school, and it wasn't a difficult standard. I don't think it was, because it was amateur rugby. It was just a club, but I quickly made it into the men's first team that year, and that was quite eye-opening for me. It was my first taste of men's rugby, and I think that's such a key stage in a player's development, is going from that sort of playing against guys your own age. A lot of them are your size. You do get some monsters when you're younger, but going into men's rugby, you learn so much more than just that level of physicality. It's guys are smarter. They know how to play the game. They've been around it a lot longer, and so I was learning off guys who, albeit were amateurs, had played sort of representative rugby at a younger age. I think there's a guy called Brendel Brandt who you won't have a clue. Most people won't have a clue who he is, but he had played for the Bulls sort of 15, 20 years before that. He was late 30s. But I played in the centre with him. And he was brilliant. I think he was so experienced. He knew the game inside and out. Like, he'd lost his pace, but he was still really physical.
They
but
call
he taught
it
me
an
so
old head
much.
for a reason, don't they? Like,
Well,
he's got a wise brain. He may be like, Huw, run this line off me, or Huw, like, when I come up, you're going to go here. And it's that kind of guidance that you can't really pay for.
Yeah, exactly. I just learned so much off him. I think the next step after that was I played university rugby. So that was more guys my age. The competition we played in was called Varsity Cup. And there's an age limit. You can't be over 25. So they limit that because obviously it's meant to be mostly students, and they don't want to encourage you to sort of stick around and play that level for much longer than you would be at university. So that was great. We ended up winning that competition. That was probably a higher standard, a higher skill level for sure than I'd played before. But yeah, just loads of fun playing at uni.
Did you feel that your game was developing out there faster than it was when you were in the UK?
It's difficult to say because I'd obviously only really been at school and I hadn't had that exposure to other levels of rugby. I hadn't had an exposure to an academy and like a professional lifestyle. So I still hadn't had that really. I was just getting exposed more to different cultures, a different style of playing, and probably just more physicality of men's rugby. So I was definitely developing for sure. And I developed fast over those first couple of years. And I think that's what my adaptability and able to sort of adapt to each level that I moved to quickly. That was probably what helped me most in getting into pro rugby.
Imagine this, there's one simple change you can add to your daily routine which would make a huge difference to the quality of your sleep, feeling less anxious, and even support your hormone balance, all without having to change massive things about your lifestyle. But here's the kicker, 75% of us are missing out on it. Not because it's rare, but because it's incredibly different to get enough from your diet alone. It's something that our bodies can't store long term and constantly need to replenish every single day. The foods that used to give us plenty in the past, like whole grains, leafy greens, and seeds, no longer have the required dosages. What is this mystery thing? It's magnesium. I and many of the high-performing individuals and podcast guests that I know use and recommend Pure Sports Ultra Magnesium. Across their supplement range, every batch is tested to the rigorous degree, and you can ensure that it's clean, simple, and extremely effective. For 10% off, you can use the code CAMBRO10 at checkout.
Yeah, I like to do my research for these episodes, and I found out that you had a bit of a baptism of fire when it came to starting in Super Rugby. You're playing away in New Zealand against Conrad Smith and Ma'a Nonu. Now, not all the listeners will be rugby fans, but that's like rugby royalty there in terms of centres, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would probably say that is the best centre combination of all time. They're certainly up there, I think. Yeah, Ma'a Nonu, Conrad Smith, they've won 2 World Cups, I'm pretty sure. Ma'a Nonu especially would probably be the best centre of all time, I think. Certainly the best 12 of all time.
All round as well.
Yeah, all-round player. So that was my first start. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so my first season with the Stormers was 2015, and I was in and around the squad. I'd done quite well in pre-season, and I was on the bench for most of the games at the start of the year. Wasn't really getting on that much. I was getting on for maybe a minute, 2 minutes, really. But like at that age, you don't care. You just want the experience. You're just happy to kind of be around those players. But yeah, we were on tour in New Zealand. One of the centres went down and I had to step in and start. And we should have won the game actually. I scored a try in the corner. I've got one of my favourite pictures is Ma'a Nonu diving across, trying to tackle me. I was just getting the ball down. And obviously I was 20, I would have been 20 or 21 at the time. That was just incredible. What a feeling.
You've always had a nose for the try line. I would say if people look at your career, you've always been able to add numbers to the score sheet from that regard. Yeah,
I think it's one of my sort of key selling points is that I'm able to score tries. I think, I've always, since I was young, I've always been able to score tries. I don't know what it is. I think like a good striker in football, I've just got a nose to the line. I'm able to be around in the right place and finish them off. So it is probably one thing that gets me picked. But yeah, you have to keep doing it.
Of course, but that's an amazing start. And if you look at how quickly that's happened from going out to work at a school as a stooge and a help to playing pro rugby in the Super Rugby, which is again probably a higher level than the European rugby at that moment in time. Anyway, I think European rugby's kind of closed the gap on it in more recent years, but that's a really quick level of progression.
Yeah, I kind of surprised myself doing it, but like I said, I think my adaptability and able to just sort of fit in and work to that level quite quickly really helped me out. I think you do have to have a level of natural talent, but then it's on top of that, it's work rate. It's being able to adapt to different environments and just upskilling yourself. I remember actually my first session with Western Province, who is sort of the sort of domestic version of the Stormers. Stormers played in Super Rugby. Western Province was kind of the same team, but just in Currie Cup, which is only in South Africa. My first session there was a backs unit session. We were just doing passing. We passed for about half an hour. And I remember my hands cramped. And that had never happened to me before, because usually you'd pass a bit in training, but not that much. But it was so important to make sure that you were just passing constantly under pressure, under fatigue, that you wouldn't never get it wrong in a game. And yeah, honestly, my hands were like going stiff at the end of that session. And I was just brilliant, because that then sent me on my way. I knew the standard that I had to get to in everything. And that was just passing, but whether it was in the gym, whether it was like defensive drills, whether it was fitness, because that first preseason I ever did was hellish. I've never sort of been in that much pain, because I'd never had to work that hard before, but I just got on with it and did it because that was what I wanted to do.
It's sink or swim at that point, isn't it? And I think those that are growth minded, and one of the kind of key personality traits I've seen across the over 300 guests we've had on the show now is the ability to step up when you're asked. Yeah. And if you do it, then it unlocks the sort of career that you had. If you haven't, then maybe that becomes the ceiling, that becomes the stumbling block, and you don't make those next moves.
Yeah, I think you talk about big game players quite a lot of the time. I think that's something that I've been able to do through my career. And it's not every time. I think there's some big games where we've lost and I've not had my best game. But at key moments, I've been able to step up. And that could be early on where I've been noticed by someone. And so it could have been while I was at False Bay or my university team, and the professional coaches were watching and they saw, well, that guy's had a good game. Let's get him up. And so you go from there, and it's playing well. It's probably playing consistently well. But when it matters, and often you don't know if someone's watching, you don't know how important it is at the time, but you look back and you think, wow, I really took that chance. So yeah, I think having the ability to play well when the pressure's on, when the stakes are higher, that's huge. And that's probably seen me propel through my career.
Yeah, like being spotted at the right time, and when opportunity knocks, have your shoes on.
Yeah.
So when the opportunity came up to score in a big game or score in the corner when you're playing in New Zealand against Ma'a Nonu Conrad Smith, guess what? Huw did it, and that's kind of given you a bit of momentum. Yeah,
for sure. I think so. I think, like I said, it's those key moments that really can make or break you. Like you say, if you don't perform in that one chance you get, that could be the only chance you ever get.
Can set you back, couldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think, and I've had setbacks in my career. I've had times where I've not stepped up to the plate, or I've been trusted and picked in a team and not played well. And so there is the other side of it. But I think for me, although at the beginning of my career I rose pretty quickly, I've been able to come back from setbacks that I've had as well, I think. And that's been key for me, is that whether it's injuries, whether it's not getting picked or having a bad game and getting dropped, I've been able to get back to work, get back on task, and prove that I can play back at that level. And so
I definitely want to talk about those challenging times, but I also understand that Wikipedia and the Scotland flag beside your name played a big role in you actually getting called up by Scotland in the first place. What happened there?
Yeah, so I was born in Scotland. I was born in Edinburgh. And when I joined the university, you had to sort of say where you're from. And because I'd kind of moved around a bit, I'd obviously born in Scotland, moved down to England, was at school in England, but had been at boarding school. I wasn't sure what to put, so I just put Edinburgh. That's where I was born. And that was what came up. The Scotland flag came up, and one of the Glasgow analysts, a guy called Gav Vaughan, who's now Scotland analyst, he was just watching our university game. I don't know how he found the link.
Total rugby nut.
He is a rugby nut. He watches everything across the world. And part of his job now, I think, is to try and identify Scottish players all over the world. I think we have a small population as it is already. We only have 2 professional teams. And so we kind of are underdogs in the world of rugby. Not totally, but we do sort of finding talent elsewhere. You look at the squads now, we do have players who have either grown up or been born in other countries that have Scottish family, or were born in Scotland and moved away like myself. And so, yeah, he saw that game, got in touch, and I was close actually to coming back to the UK and signing for Glasgow quite early on. But I was just enjoying living in South Africa too much. So I ended up staying there for a few years, which I think was brilliant because it gave me that exposure of Super Rugby. And then I ended up coming back, coming over to Glasgow in 2017.
It's funny how these things happen, isn't it? Like somebody spotting you in a random university game and being like, oh, it turns out he's Scottish. Because again, Huw Jones, you could think Welsh.
Well,
and
exactly.
Then English-ish accent. They would have no idea that you were maybe born in Edinburgh.
Yeah, well, exactly. Because I'd grown up in England, I had an English accent. Everyone assumed I was English, which part of my family is English. So I'm Scottish and English, I guess. And obviously with my name, it is an extremely Welsh name, which people are always questioning me about. And I say, well, you got to ask my dad. He grew up, I think, he went to boarding school in Wales. And although I think he's maybe half Welsh, not even half Welsh, I don't think.
A percentage.
Yeah, just a little bit Welsh. He grew up sort of following everything Wales because he was at school there. All his friends were Welsh. And so, yeah, I mean, my family, we've all got Welsh names actually, when you think about it. So he was pretty obsessed. But yeah, I could have been anything, but it was that Scotland flag that came up that sort of set me on the path to where I am now, I guess.
Yeah, it's really cool because when I was reading up, like, we've gone through periods where they've talked about things like Fortress Scotland or Fortress England, where the international teams won't pick players from outside the country. So if you weren't playing at Warriors or Edinburgh, you don't get picked. But at the time when you were out in South Africa, you were able to go on the tour to Japan because you were still eligible to get in the squad. And I think that's a clever policy. I think England are shooting themselves in the foot, for example, with like not picking some of the players that are playing in France or abroad or whatever, but you were able to be involved.
Yeah, and it was brilliant for me. I probably had the easiest travel because I came straight from Australia because we were on tour there at the time, so it was fine for me. But yeah, it is difficult. I think with England, because they have so many teams and such a big rugby structure, they can have that rule because if you're an English player, why not play in England? There's 10 teams in the Premiership. Yeah. There's the Championship as well, and so I think for those guys that move abroad, that is a career choice. But I think it's probably fair enough that they have that rule. For Scotland, it's very difficult. There's only 2 professional teams, and so a lot of players move away, or who do move away and play elsewhere, are probably encouraged to do so because then we can bring the next player through. Otherwise, we'd be blocking.
There's a finite number of players as well. Yeah, I had Rory Lawson on the podcast last year, and he was speaking about how much he developed at Gloucester because the Edinburgh shirt at 9 was Mike Blair's for years, and he went down to Gloucester, carved a great career, became Scotland captain for a period, and it was only possible because he moved and he actually developed a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I think we could name loads of different positions where there's probably a couple of players who could easily be starters at other clubs where they have to share the jersey at Glasgow and Edinburgh. And it's a difficult one because we want to obviously have the best squad we can to be able to compete in our league, to be able to compete in Europe. You have to have that squad depth. I think we've got sort of nearly 10 injuries at the moment. So we're struggling for players. We still have a very strong team, but those guys sometimes need a rest. The way that the schedule is, the way that we train now, and the physicality and sort of the intensity of games, it's very difficult to play sort of 5, 6, 7 games in a row. So you do have to have the strength of squad, but at the same time, if you've got 2 or 3 guys who are all good enough to start, then at some point someone's got to move away so that they can all get decent game time. Otherwise, like I said, it's the development issue, and that's what we need to get is enough players playing at a higher level that we have that really good depth for Glasgow, Edinburgh, and ultimately Scotland.
Absolutely. What were those early days like playing for Scotland?
Amazing. I think that first tour was interesting because I knew no one and no one knew me. I think a lot of the time now, I've been in sort of Scotland camps for a while, and a lot of new guys that come in have come up through age grade, whether it's under 18s, 20s, or they're at Glasgow and Edinburgh, and they often know people, so it's quite an easy transition. But I do feel for the guys I see now who come in from absolutely nowhere and no one knows who they are, because it can be difficult just walking into a room with 40 other blokes.
Some big personalities too.
Yeah, some big personalities, and you're trying to compete as well at training, so you want to play and train as well as you can to try and get in the team. So I think I was still young, so I was very much not expecting. It was just a 2-game tour, so I wasn't expecting sort of much. And just to walk into the team, I was there to learn. And I did get off the bench for my debut in the second game, which was just such an incredible feeling. It was brilliant, and just to meet all those guys and learn just a little bit in that short time I was with them was really good. And I remember my Stormers coach, when I came back to the Stormers a couple of weeks later, because it was still mid-season for us, he said that I'd just sort of grown so much in those couple of weeks that I was away. My skill level, my confidence, he said that I just came back and I was just sort of already a little bit more grown up, better player. So I thought it was obviously really good for me. And eventually I did make the transition to come back to Glasgow, so I could be sort of, I guess, more local.
And the coaches there have more of an eye on you. The SRU have more control over your game time and how you're actually managed to.
Yeah, exactly. That is probably the biggest perk of being around, because you have that constant contact. There is a good link, obviously, between the club and Scotland. You're managed really well. The physios and doctors are sort of on board around everything medical. You've got the S&C coaches who we get the Scotland S&C in once a week. So he's just checking like everything that we're doing so that it's seamless when you go into those Scotland camps. Although the coaching is different, the coaches want to put their own stamp on it. They are very much sort of in contact, and they'll constantly be talking. So yeah, it's great. That's probably the best thing around playing in Scotland, is that they've constantly got an eye on you. So you're in that sort of pool of players that they're looking at most of the time.
What coaches have had the biggest impact on you?
Oh, that's a good question. I've had a lot of different coaches. I'd say the coach that I had at False Bay, which was the amateur club in Cape Town, he then became the coach at the university. So he was the reason I moved across. In terms of his coaching style, his name's Kevin Muscanth, and he now coaches Tel Aviv Heat. They play in a European league. I'm not sure who they play against, but a few boys have gone and played there. He was so good at getting the players emotionally motivated and aligned. His actual coaching style, he was sort of an overlooker. He was more of a director of rugby, because we had backs sort of skills coach. We had a forwards coach as well. But his vision for us was brilliant. And I was with him for 2 years. We won the league with False Bay. We won the league with UCT. So he's definitely successful.
Those memories must stay with you as well.
Oh, they're brilliant. Yeah, it's not just the celebrations. It's everything you go through together as a team, leading up to that. Yeah, just really special memories. Loads of different players, and different playing sort of your amateur club rugby, where you're only trained sort of 2 evenings a week and then turn up on game day, and you haven't really got much of a plan, but we just had great players and we were able to play well together. And then university, a little bit more training, more gym. Like we had a big pre-season. And obviously the gym and training is sort of structured around your lectures and everyone's got a different schedule. So it can be a bit disorganized, but yeah, university, that was one of the best years of my life. Just having so much fun playing rugby at a high standard that wasn't quite professional. So you didn't have that sort of pressure.
Slightly less intense.
Yeah, like we weren't getting paid. So you didn't have the pressure of, well, what's my next contract? Or like, how much am I getting paid? How much is he getting paid or anything? So you were just there for the fun of it, but it was a really good standard. So yeah, he's probably a coach that he set me on my path because he brought me with him. Then what other coaches have I had that have been, I'd say a guy called Davy Sneyman, who is the Western Province attack coach. In terms of making me a skillful player, he's probably done the most. He was the coach that did that passing session where my hands cramped. And most of our sessions were just based on individual skills. So we practiced passing, stepping, kicking for so long. Whereas a lot of other attack coaches, you get practice, fancy plays,
maybe
or
on the moves
structure.
Or the place you're going to run. Okay.
Yeah, and although structure is really important, I had Darby at a really young age where I was still developing and learning a lot. And although I was able to pass, step and kick, he made that so much better for me, and made me more effective as an attacker. So I was able to just beat defenders. and sort of shape defenders in a way that I wanted to, so that I could beat them.
And it's one of the things that you're known for now: line breaks and finishing off tries as well.
Yeah.
If that's a strength that you had, and he's like 10x'd it and really told you to double down, then I think it shows in your play now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was his thing, and that was brilliant for me. I'll do one more.
Well, I was interested because that's clearly a strength that you've always had.
Yeah.
But one criticism of your game was around your defence, and I read that Steve Tandy had quite a big role on that.
Yeah, he was going to be my next one.
There we go. We're in sync now.
He's been huge. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, we're on the same lines. Steve Tandy's been amazing for me. He was probably the first defence coach that really took an interest in developing me individually as a player. I think I've had other defence coaches that were good and sort of taught a system and what they wanted from us, but I think obviously, as I had been criticised for my defence, and I'm prepared to admit there were games where I'd been rubbish and I'd missed tackles that I should have made.
13's a hard position though, because if you're running a blitz, you're coming up really far forward, and you're also playing against the most elusive players. Like 13s don't like playing against you. So guess what? You're not going to like playing against them typically, unless you maybe get the line right, you get the speed right, and all these different things that maybe he's been able to speak to you in a language that resonates.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is a very difficult position to defend in. You have often the most space around you. I think if the defenders inside you get quite tight, which they often can because a team will do that with their shape, you can get quite exposed and have multiple options to try and defend. And often you have to quickly decide whether you're coming up or going back and trying to save time and get defenders close to you, or if you're just going to go and make a read. And so it can be difficult in that position. But I think he spoke to me and coached me and kind of just taught me to see the game just better, to be more calm in those situations, to trust my pace, to trust my physicality. That because he always said to me, he was like, "You can do this. I've seen you do it before, but it's just about being consistent and staying focused in those moments and making the right decision." So yeah, he's been huge for my career, because I think I've gotten to the point now where people don't really talk about my defense anymore, and I think that's as good as it's going to get. I think I don't expect people to be like, "Oh, he's an amazing defender," but the fact that people don't really talk about it, it's not an issue.
Yeah, you were talking about like recovering from low points, and I know you didn't get picked for the 2019 World Cup, and Scotland went with Chris Harris at 13, who's known for defence more than his try scoring exploits, and that was a direct choice by the management to be like, look, we want to play with a 13 that is really, really solid defensively. Whereas now you've had a much more consistent run the Scotland team again, and nobody's been like, oh, we're leaky at 13, but they're like, oh, but Huw scored a hat-trick against Italy and he scored against whoever else, Wales or whoever, and you're able to be like, right, cool, I've kind of tackled that area that was a bit of a weakness.
Yeah, exactly. Chris Harris is an unbelievable defender, and
he's
he
known
knows
for it.
the game.
I mean,
he knows the game
ended up
so
getting
well.
capped for the Lions because he was so good at tackling.
Yeah. And it's not just the tackling; it's his sort of marshalling, his defensive knowledge of the game, and getting the guys around him to be in the right places at the same time. So I actually learned a lot from him while he was in the Scotland squad, and he was really aligned with Steve Tandy, I think. Yeah, so learning from Steve has been huge for me, and like I said, it's gotten to the point now where I went away and I worked on it because obviously I knew that I had to. It was pretty public. I'd been told multiple times, and it was in the news. Huw Jones is not a good defender. So
what does that feel like when that's happening?
It's difficult. I think, yeah, it's very hard to sort of take that, especially when it's in the public eye, because I still get it now. I said that obviously people don't talk about it. Coaches don't talk about it. Pundits who know the game well don't talk about my defense because they can see that I'm a good defender. But people who don't know the game as well, or are just casual fans, maybe will have heard Huw Jones is a bad defender and will just still roll with it. Because
they might have watched the Six Nations in 2018 when you missed a couple of tackles, and then it's still in their head that when they watch Six Nations in 2025 that they might break through at 13. Exactly.
I think it's one of those things you can't completely remove a stigma like that. I think I can play as well as I obviously as well as I can, and I'll get sort of the recognition from the sort of the people that matter, I guess, my teammates, coaches, the guys who are sort of directing my career. But yeah, you do sometimes get comments from people and just seeing that, oh, Huw Jones is a rubbish defender. Oh, he can't defend. And it is difficult.
I'm a big believer in, if somebody's not a man in the arena, then I'm not going to take what they've got to say particularly seriously. So I've had loads of amazing feedback from really good podcasters that have helped me develop my question set, my style, my cadence, how I speak, the production that I do in terms of the clips and everything that I post. But if some random person was like, oh, your podcast's a bit crap, I wouldn't take it on board because they probably haven't even listened and they're just being negative. In the same way, if some of the pundits are saying like, oh, Huw's massively improved his defence, or if somebody like an O'Driscoll says, oh, actually, I think Huw defended poorly in that game, you would take that more seriously than somebody being just throwing shit at you. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you're going to take it seriously from the people that know the game and the people whose opinions matter. And obviously, I know when I see people saying, oh, he's a rubbish defender, well, I know they don't know what they're talking about.
How much media do you consume?
Not a lot, to be fair. I think I don't see anything. You don't really see any comments or anything on Instagram. It's just pictures, isn't it? And the odd DM that I will get, I tend to just block people straight away if it's negative. I've not had one for a long time, so I must be doing something right. In terms of the other stuff, I don't actually. So I'm on sort of Twitter X, what it is now, but not a lot of rugby stuff comes up. I don't know, my algorithm must just be different, but I don't actually see. I mean, a lot of it I just follow sort of funny comedian accounts or whatever and just see funny videos. But I don't see a lot of news around rugby. I think a lot of stuff now you have to subscribe as well, which I can't be bothered to do. So most of the information I get is from guys at training or from the coaches. But
somebody send a screenshot into the group chat or something like that.
Well, it could be something like that or something that's, someone else has seen. I know my dad's bad for it. He goes on Facebook and reads all the comments after games and stuff. And then he'll sometimes come to me and be like, oh, well, like this person said this. And I was like, well, I don't care. Like, that's not for me to know.
There's a level of maturity required for you to feel like that though. I think probably just given age, like I think you're 31, Huw, I think social media has grown massively over the course of your career. So maybe when you were like 18, 19 breaking through, there wasn't the same activity on Facebook or Twitter that would allow you to maybe get swayed. So at least now you're more mature when that's actually available to you in terms of people commenting. You can kind of like water off a duck's back. But when you're younger stage, it's probably even harder for players coming through now.
Oh, for sure. I think it's difficult because when you're first starting out, like those games are so important and like if someone has said a comment about you that's not good, that could really derail your career. I'm at a point now, I've been around the block. I've played enough that I know that doesn't matter. That's not going to affect me. That's not going to affect my career. But yeah, when you're younger, you can get swayed by that sort of thing. And it's quite a dangerous thing because it can really put people off their game. It can knock people's confidence. And without confidence, you're not the same player. So it can be difficult.
Yeah, we saw Owen Farrell move to France basically off the back of abuse he was getting online, and that's one of the most. He seems like a really resilient guy as well.
Yeah, I think he was getting some of the worst probably, and he's had it his whole career. I think anyone that really knows about rugby will know that he is a fantastic player and has done amazing things for England. A lot of people would say he's England's best player or one of their best players they've ever had. But people just can't help themselves. If they don't like a certain style of play or if they just decide that they don't like a player, then they just give them abuse, whether that's online, whether they're just talking about them in the pub or whether they're booing them at the ground. It's not great. And you hate to see it, but I guess people are human. It's always going to happen.
Of course.
And I know that I don't have it as bad as a lot of other people do. I think I look at footballers. You look at...
Well, you live in Glasgow as well, so you understand what it's like for the old firm.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's just so much attention on it. It can obviously be really difficult for players.
Yeah, one of my friends played golf with Jack Butland, who plays in goal for Rangers, and he will cancel the round on a Sunday if the Saturday's gone badly. Even if he's played fine, he's still cancelling on Sunday because he just knows that the fans don't want to see him enjoying himself off the back of it. They want to be like, what's he doing at Loch Lomond or the Carrick or St Andrews? And you're thinking, oh, he's got you probably play better next week if he gets time to decompress, but he knows that the optics of it are really bad.
You just can't go out in public. Yeah. It must be difficult, I think. Glasgow's obviously not really a rugby city, so we can walk about and not really be noticed. But yeah, for footballers, it must be so tough. I think of guys in the Premier League, probably think of someone like Harry Maguire, probably got the most abuse out of anyone I can think of in football, really. And I don't know, I think he's come out and said how it's probably affected his mental health, and the kind of resilience he must have. But also, during those times, how do you leave the house? Because you know that he's obviously a high-profile guy. He's pretty noticeable. He's a big guy. He's got a massive head. But yeah, how do you go to the shops? You can't do anything. Obviously, it's fine for us. We can go
There's
out
a level of
it's
fame
easy.
where things tip over from being like, oh, Huw, you played great at the weekend. Let's get a photo. Or if somebody sees you at David Lloyd or the gym, whatever, somebody's, oh, you played well, or good luck for next week.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
But there's a tipping point where it's like, oh God, I get noticed when I go to Waitrose or I go to the Aldi and I'm getting a coffee in the West End and somebody's hassling you. That's not the same.
Yeah. No, I'm really thankful that I've never had that. Most of the time when I'm out and about, if people do spot me, they're generally really nice about it. And even if you've had a bad game, they'll just be like, oh, unlucky on the weekend. Or they'll just say a game that you had that was a little bit further back. They'll be like, oh, well, you played really well in that game.
Yeah.
So,
what's been some of your favourite games for Scotland?
Oof. I think the one that everyone always talks about is the England game in 2018. That was great because the build up to it throughout the week, we had trained so well. And it was so big because I don't know how long it was before that we hadn't won, but it was a long time. And the year before, we'd got absolutely pumped down at Twickenham. So it was huge because not only was it kind of like a revenge mission, it was also a chance to create history. I don't think anyone expected us to win, but everyone across the board had such a brilliant game. And obviously I scored 2 tries and that's what everyone likes to talk about and comes up to me and says, oh, the way you played against England. But it was one of those games that is just so fun to play because everyone's playing well. Yeah. And you just feel like the whole team's on another level.
How often have you felt like that on the pitch in a Scotland jersey?
A few times, yeah. I think the best part of a game when you can really feel that is it's like the last 10 minutes when the game's won and you just feel so much more powerful than the opposition. You can see that they're tired, and even though you're tired, you have this energy that you can just keep going and going. And you may sort of score a couple more tries and really finish them off. Or it may be that you're just defending and they're still plugging away, but it kind of feels easy. Like you're blowing, you're tired, you're looking around, like you're working hard, and it could be a long defensive set, but the crowd's behind you. It's just such a good atmosphere, and you just feel like that's probably when it feels at its best because you've won.
Yeah, I can see the way you're smiling talking about it. It really means something, and it's like almost a flow state, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think why that game in particular is mentioned and why the Scotland team that we watch now is remembered more favourably than ones of the past is because of the free-flowing style of the wins as well. So some of the wins against England, even the draw at Twickenham where we just scored so many tries, it's very different. When I was growing up, we had a bit of a battle with England. We might win by a Dan Parks drop goal or a Chris Patterson penalty, and it was a bit of a kind of a war of attrition. Whereas now I feel like we go toe to toe. We outscore them almost every time we play in terms of tries and flair, and it's so much more fun to watch.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what has probably got the country and fans around us. I think we've had however many sellouts over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. I think most games we have now at Murrayfield are sellouts. And I think because people want to come and watch, because we play an exciting brand of rugby. And we don't always win, but you can pretty much guarantee we're going to score pretty good tries. And I think that's what's exciting. We have really skillful players. We've got great sort of powerful, quick backs. We've got skillful forwards as well. And that's a key thing in how we play is because we know we're not the biggest team out there. I think there have been games where we've been overpowered by the likes of Ireland, South Africa, sometimes England or France, because they just have that size and power on us. And so we've known, obviously, for a while that we have to adapt and play a different way. And whether that's playing at speed, whether that's sort of playing in the right areres and kicking a little bit more, or getting it to the wide channels and getting it to sort of a couple of danger men out wide. That's our strengths. And so that's what we play to. And I think that shows in the tries that we score. And when we're hot. Like sort of when we win well, we can be unstoppable. But it's obviously we're trying to find that consistency and do it all the time and try and have that overall game. But yeah, I think what has got sort of Scotland rugby fans excited is that we're not playing a boring side of rugby. So when we win, it's amazing. Obviously, when we lose, it can be disappointing, but we still score good tries.
It's definitely the most talented Scotland team that I've watched, and I'm early 30s as well. What do you think it would take for us to maybe make that step to win a Six Nations or get beyond where we've been at the World Cup before?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's difficult.
It's fine margins, isn't it?
Because I'm in it at the moment. I'm still involved, and I firmly believe when we're playing, I think we can beat anyone. Like, we go into games believing we can win, and we have a plan and we have a game plan, and obviously it doesn't always work. But yeah, I don't know whether it's maybe depth. I think when we do get a couple of key injuries, it really hampers us. And like I said earlier on about how we obviously only have those two professional teams, Glasgow and Edinburgh, and we've got players playing elsewhere, but it's trying to build as much depth as we can. And it seems every time we come around to another Six Nations, there's a couple of guys who are unavailable through injury.
A Tuilapo's injured.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
He's your great centre partner, isn't he?
I mean, yeah, he's brilliant, and he was a huge loss to this Six Nations. As captain as well, he's a brilliant leader on and off the field, and just an unbelievable player. So he was a huge loss. But yeah, it's stuff like that probably, if we just had a little bit more depth in every position, it's more competition, it's a high quality of training, and ultimately that probably breeds a better performance on the weekend. Yeah,
you mentioned injuries there. I understand you had a bit of a layoff in 2022 for about 6 months. Is that the main sort of injury you've had within your career?
So I've had a few. I think that was probably the longest one. Yeah. So I had a stress fracture in my back that I sustained while I was at Harlequins for the one season I was there. And I kind of played through it because, I mean, I was playing every week and I didn't want to not play. So I wouldn't say I masked the injury because, I mean, I was on the physio bed every morning. I was telling them I was in pain. But I think it was probably the fact that sort of they wanted me to play, I wanted to play, that I was able to kind of just play through that pain. It gradually got worse and worse towards the end of the season, to the point where in the last game of the season, I was really struggling, and every step I took was sort of a shooting pain in my back.
You only get one back as well. You've got to be careful.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. Yeah, and so we got it scanned. Sort of a week later after that game, saw a stress fracture. Went and saw a specialist, and he was like, "Look, you're lucky that I'm not putting you in a back brace." I didn't have to have surgery, luckily. It was basically just, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks I wasn't allowed to do any exercise. And we were moving house at the time. We were moving back to Glasgow, so I wasn't allowed to lift any heavy boxes, which was not great. My wife wasn't happy. But that was a tough one. I got pretty fat.
Oh really?
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to do any exercise, and it was the summer. We got married that summer, actually. So yeah, quite a lot of cake, quite a few drinks. Ended up coming back to Glasgow massively overweight. But yeah, I mean, I worked hard, did all my rehab, and I was back playing by December. And so yeah, that's probably the longest injury I've had. Other than I tore my hamstring in 2017, and that was another sort of 5 months. But yeah, different injuries I've had have sort of been shorter, but yeah, I seem to get
more niggles.
Niggly ones. I've had sort of toe and finger, wrist injuries, ones that they're not big ones, but they really sort of set you back in terms of, like with a hand injury, it's so difficult. You can't use your arm. I just hate that. It's just the most frustrating thing. And obviously with like a toe injury, it's mad how quickly your body just loses muscle.
strips off.
Yeah, it just goes like 2-3 weeks. If you're in a boot, if you've had surgery and you're not using those muscles, it's just gone. And it just takes a while to build it back up again. I think I'm still going. I mean, with my foot, I had surgery on my toe in 2021, and it's still not quite. It's not as strong as my right foot, and so like I don't think it ever will be. But it's an ongoing thing that I've constantly got to do that rehab to just keep it or get it to the level that I need it to be at that I can play.
Yeah. What are the sorts of things that you do to prevent injury then, so that you can be at your best?
So in terms of when you've had an injury, you do a lot of rehab. But there's also sort of prehab. So we do a lot of exercises that are just kind of trying to make your body bulletproof, as it were. So there's a lot of core stuff, like outside of your main gym lifts that we do throughout the season, and we're not sort of pushing PBs really. We're not doing 1 rep maxes. A lot of this stuff is functional for rugby and trying to develop power, develop speed in those sort of strength movements. But on top of that, you've got to work all the little muscles. You've got to work your core. You've got to make sure that you're activating everything and you're feeling good on a daily basis, that you're not going to pick up little niggle injuries.
It's not just the beach muscles, it's everything around it, so you're coordinated.
Yeah, we don't just sort of walk into the gym and do a couple of squats and get on the bench press. Like, we do that, of course, but it's, a lot of the key ones are like real sort of functional stuff that's rugby specific, but also making sure that you're not getting hurt. So a lot of calf, ankle stuff, because your feet are the most important thing. We're running around every day. Making sure your hips are aligned and getting that core strength around your hips so that you're not getting sort of little hamstring, groin, like sort of little injuries that can keep you out for 2-3 weeks if it's just a little bit, if you just pulled it or it's just a bit sore. So yeah.
What's the split like between sort of conditioning, like you're speaking about, and skills and actually on the pitch?
So in a normal day, beginning of the week especially, those are our longer days. You'll be in the gym for about an hour, and that doesn't include, just before the gym we'll have a kind of an activation doing these sorts of things, whether it's sort of calf iso holds, or it's just an upper body primer to just get ready for your upper body gym. The gym session will generally last about an hour, and then you'll have a unit session, which would be sort of just backs. That's us. Would be doing our skills, a lot of passing, and running a few plays as well. Forwards have it. Honestly, I don't know how they do it. I'm so glad I'm not a forward, but yeah, mauling sessions, scrum sessions, just beating the shit out of each other basically. And that's just sort of half an hour in the morning, and then we've got our team session in the afternoon. So most of what we do is on field. But that sort of gym stimulus in the morning really sets you up for the day.
Yeah, and away from the training, I'd love to talk about nutrition and what you guys eat from that perspective. You said that summer when you were injured, there was too much cake and too much booze. What does it look like in season?
In season, try to be as clean as I can. I think we get food at training. We get food when we're in Scotland camp, of course, because we're in the hotel. And a lot of what we get is just sort of, they try to cover all bases, and it's up to you as an individual to tailor it to what you need. We have a nutritionist that is there for guidance, and a lot of what he does will be working with young guys, young academy boys who are coming into the system still sort of physically developing, and they either need to lose weight or gain muscle and gain weight. For me, I've kind of found my optimum. I'm around 100, 101 kilos. And
it's like you're fighting weight, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that's where I'm at my best. I feel quick, powerful, but also strong enough that I'm like sort of able to be physically abrasive in contact as well. And so, yeah, that's probably my sweet spot is 100, 101, which is what I'm at the moment. But yeah, just making sure that we're getting enough. Protein's probably the biggest one, is that I probably didn't used to eat nearly enough protein for my size, my build, and what I'm trying to do. I think I was probably eating the average amount of protein, whereas like we need so much more.
No one consciously eats like 180 or 200 grams of protein. You have to really be aware of it.
Yeah, exactly. You have to like make that decision to do it. And so that's something that in the last sort of couple of seasons I've got much better at is sort of preparing to be sort of to eat better. Because I'll have my meals at training, but then I also know that I'm having a snack later when I get home, or whatever I'm having for dinner. I'm sort of, if I'm having the same thing, like me and my wife having the same thing, I'm having sort of 3 chicken breasts. She's having 1. She can have 2 if she wants. I mean, but it's that kind of thing. It's like I'm not the average build, and we're all sort of, as rugby players, we're all different builds, and we all need different things. And I think that's why there's no sort of tailored nutrition plan for a rugby player. Each position is different. But yeah, it's about finding what works for you and what's best.
Yeah, definitely. What about in terms of things like ice baths, sauna, that sort of recovery side of things? What does that look like? Because it's been so popular. You were at David Lloyd earlier this week with our mutual friend Adam Ash in the sauna. So I know it plays some sort of a role, but what does that look like?
Yeah, sauna's a big one. I'm not one of those guys that is getting in the ice bath at 5 a.m. every morning. I think
meditating.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one for me. I think I did it a little bit through the summer actually that we were at the World Cup, because I mean it was great weather. It was nice and warm outside at 6 a.m. So you were able to get in and not feel too painful. But I don't know if I could do it in sort of -5 degrees in Glasgow during the winter. So I do use ice post training. So we get a lot of guidance on this. So after a big sort of physical day, ice is key, because you've been hitting, you've been like using your shoulders, you've been sort of running around, you've been going to deck. So ice is really good from obviously an anti-inflammatory point of view. Probably my favorite sort of form of recovery to do is contrast baths. So I'm getting that ice and heat at the same time. Not at the same time.
You're going between the two, yeah.
So we've got the 2 baths next to each other, which is great. So you just hop in and out, and there'll probably be a couple of guys you're just switching over each time, 2 minutes in each, probably 3 or 4 rounds of that. I find that really helps me recover well from training, because heat is, I find, just as important as ice. It's so good for your muscles. Sauna's a good one. I mean, I don't claim to be an expert on any of this stuff, but we get told these are the best things to do and when to do it. So I generally try to sauna in a match week at the beginning of the week. It will be in the afternoon or evening, just because that's the time we get. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, sort of, if I'm getting sauna 4 times a week, I don't know what it does, but it just makes me feel good.
It's front loading at the front of the week as well, so there's no risk of dehydration towards match day as well. And I think it gets us into that kind of parasympathetic state where we relax a little bit now. Like I certainly find if I do heat later in the day, it helps my quality of sleep. Yeah,
for sure.
And it enables me to sort of unwind a little bit after a busy day on the laptop or a busy day on emails or calls. I feel like I can chill down after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, those are probably the main ones. And as well, when you're injured, sort of ice is brilliant for inflammation. So, yeah, in terms of recovery, probably other than that, getting in the pool and just getting moving, I think is such a big one that is probably not really focused on. We always focus on the little, like the bells and whistles and the extra stuff. But in terms of actually just getting out and going for a walk, that can often just make you feel so much better. Like every morning now, I wake up and like my ankles are stiff. I'm walking down the stairs and I'm walking sort of sideways because like one of my knees is a bit stiffer. But once you've been walking around for sort of 20 minutes in the morning, you actually start to feel better. And once you get moving, if I take the dog out for a walk, if I'm just like going out and about like throughout my day, you do feel better. And so that's always a key one, is we're always told on a day off, just get out for a walk. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Just
it's low impact as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And if you've got an injury, if you're particularly sore, then get in the pool because it takes your body weight away.
No impact at all,
It's movement again. So yeah, in terms of recovery, I obviously do use those things, but just getting moving is the main thing.
What about from a supplement perspective? What are the key things for you?
So for me, hydration is everything. We've got it here.
course we do.
The electrolytes from Pure Sport. So I actually take these every day. A lot of guys just take them on game day or before a big session, but hydration is so key. And this has got everything in it. This has got your sodium, potassium, magnesium. I'm just reading off it.
Yeah, well,
calcium,
that was the big thing for me when I was chatting to Adam and of course Tom, who we both know at Pure Sport. It's when it's really efficaciously backed with all the different ingredients, it's quite reassuring for us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, you know exactly what's in it, and that's probably the best thing about it. So hydration is huge. Like again, I'm not an expert on this, but it just makes you feel so much better. I was having a conversation with one of my teammates the other day, is that you don't realize how important it is until you've had both ends of it, where you feel so dehydrated that you just can't move, and then where you are properly hydrated and you just feel amazing, you feel energized, and that's what it does to your body. I think I do take sort of quite a few supplements, but that is the key to everything.
They've become so much more popular in the last couple of years, but you see so many brands jump on it and just have like this random concoction.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess because Pure Sport was founded by two rugby players who were trying to perform at their absolute best, we put ourselves in a position where you know what's in it and you know it's tested and it's legit.
Yeah, exactly. I think, Pure Sport was founded by athletes, is run by athletes, and the guys that are using it every single day are sort of top level athletes. So it's definitely, everything's informed sport, and you know that it's safe and tested. So yeah, it's, when it comes to supplements, it is the best of the best, because you know it's tried and tested by top level.
Have you dabbled with magnesium or anything like that for your sleep?
Yes. So I generally do sleep pretty well. But
You've
I
got a
do
newborn
take,
as well, don't you?
exactly. Yeah. I got a 1-year-old, so and she doesn't sleep well. So it is big. Sleep is obviously massive. I'd put sleep and hydration probably on the same level. Is that waking up refreshed in the morning is the biggest thing, and it's so good for your recovery. Forget anything I said about ice baths and heat and saunas. Sleep is the number one thing. I think if you're getting a good 8 hours sleep, that fixes a lot of things. That can fix aches, pains, anything from the day before. You will feel good after you've had a decent sleep. So yeah, it's huge. I take the magnesium because I find that I sleep deeper with it. There are other sort of nootropic stuff that they do. I can't remember the name of it now. I think it's Reishi.
And there's an Unwind mushroom blend. Yeah,
there's
that's
an
right.
Unwind one.
It was. I heard the interview with Ben Earl, who obviously plays 8 for England. He does stuff with Pure Sport, and he was speaking about his sleep score on Whoop went up massively off the back of magnesium, and it's just the depth of it. Like, we all want to find more time in bed.
Yeah.
But how possible is that with a newborn, with a business, with a family, whatever it is you've got on? So if I can be in bed for 8.5 hours, if I can make my score 80, 90, 100%. Then I'm going to take something that allows me to do that.
Well, exactly. It's making that time as effective as possible. And if it's something that it's making you fall asleep quicker, or if it's just making your sleep deeper, that's going to be more effective as it is. So yeah, those things are huge. I think other than that, what else are the ones that I take regularly would be cordyceps. I don't know. I don't know if this is placebo, but my fitness scores went up after I started taking cordyceps. Genuinely,
it's a PED.
I like it. Sort of, they talk. It's meant to be. It boosts your sort of cardiovascular fitness. And I've never been one that's been I've never been the fittest in the team or getting the best sort of scores. But I PB'd on my Bronco, and I regularly feel.
For the listeners, what's that run involve?
Oh, so the Bronco it's a sort of standard fitness test that every rugby team, whether you're amateur or professional,
there'll be rugby
most
players
guys
getting PTSD just hearing the
honestly,
name.
I hate it, and I try to avoid it every year that I can. But it's essentially, you start on the line. It's shuttles. So there's a cone at 20 meters, there's a cone at 40 meters, and there's one at 60, and it's out to 20 and back, out to 40 and back, out to 60 and back. That's 1 rep, and you do 5 in a row, and it's timed. And so I think it was actually posted on, I saw it on Instagram recently, how like the guys who've got the best scores. There was a guy down at Gloucester who ran a 4:08 or something, which is just incredible. I I didn't think that was possible. Well, not amongst rugby players. I'm sure professional runners could do it way quicker, but yeah, I'm around the 4:40 mark. So, and that's me going balls to the wall. That's as quick as I can go. But yeah, it's a really tough test, and we tried to avoid it as much as we can. But I did find that not just with that, but just in games, in training, I was breathing better. I also, that could be the fact that we had a breathing coach come into Glasgow last season and sort of give us a couple of sort of pointers on how we can be more effective at getting our breath back, because rugby is such a high intensity game. It's start, stop, you're sprinting and then you suddenly stop. There is rest, but it's about using that rest in the best way to get you back to your level, to breathe properly and to be sort of recovered in that moment, and not sort of just hands on knees and breathing heavily. And although I'm pretty sure I did see something that hands on knees is better than, you know how you always get told after a fitness test, like stand up and hands on your heads. And I've always felt when I go hands on head, like it tightens my chest. But as soon as I sort of lean over, then you just feel like you can get more air in and you recover quicker.
We'll Google that study for another time.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's cool that you had that Glasgow guy coming in talking about your breathing as well. Pre-match, I'm interested. Are there any like sort of rituals that you have to get you primed before you run out the tunnel?
I try not to. I try not to have rituals, because if it doesn't work one week, then you start to question it. Or at least I do. So I mean, there'll be things that I like to feel comfortable and I like to feel good. And I'm one of those guys who the physios always tell me I'm very particular about my strapping. If I need to strap strapping my ankles or something, and it needs to feel a certain way. And if it's too tight, I need to take it off, do it again. And I suppose in that sense, I'm fairly high maintenance because I need to feel good going into a game. But yeah, in terms of my preparation, I think on game day, I'll save my electrolytes because I only take one of these a day. I'll save that for closer to kickoff. So if it's a Scotland game, I'll put it in my water just as I'm getting on the bus, and I'll sip that sort of up until kickoff. It's not sort of a put it in your water.
Do you caffeinate as well?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So also on a game day, I won't have a coffee. Unless it's a really late kickoff, then I try to split the game split that day in two, because otherwise you're waiting around for like 10 hours. So I wake up early as it is. My body clock now, obviously with the baby, I'm up around 7 every morning. So on a game day, say we had an 8 p.m. kickoff, I may have a coffee in the morning, but if not, if it's like a 2-3 o'clock, I won't have one, because I know that I'm having that caffeine before the game.
What's your choice?
We've got the gels, we've got the caffeine shots, we've got the caffeine gum. So I tend to take a combination of the gel and the gum. So depending on how I'm feeling when I get there and how long we've got, because we don't always arrive at exactly the same time, you kind of have to adapt. I'll take the gel, which is like a carb gel, but with caffeine with it. I'll take that before I go out to warm up, and then I'll have caffeine gum once we come back in, just before we go out for kickoff. And then at halftime, I'll have another caffeine sort of carb gel. So I'm getting that sort of throughout.
And is there anything that you're doing from like a mental preparation or visualization perspective before you play?
Not really, no. I think everything's done during the week. I think we're in the building, we're training, we're reviewing, we're sort of looking at the opposition. So when I arrive at game day, I should be, and I feel prepared. Like there's no excuses to not arrive at the stadium feeling like you know exactly what you're doing. Whether that is your role within certain plays or the structure of your attack. Or knowing what's coming. You're not always going to know what's coming from the opposition, but if you've looked at your opposite man, or if you've looked at a couple of the key plays that they've been running consistently, then you feel prepared. And so in terms of a visualization thing, no, because you don't know how the game's going to go. So physically, I get prepared as well as I can. I go out to the warm up and I take that sort of 20 to 30 minutes, however long our warm up is, to basically get up to speed. So I get moving, I get warm, do a couple of accelerations. I get to the point where I can sprint, which now that I'm a bit older takes me longer. Whereas
you're just getting warm enough so that's not going to cause a niggle.
Yeah, when I was 20, we used to run out, hit a couple of drop goals, and that would be you, and you could just sprint around from the get-go.
I heard Joe Marler talking about this, and he's really funny when he speaks in the podcast. He was like, used to be made of dust and magic.
Yeah.
And you would like walk out in the pitch, crack your neck this way, crack it that way, and then he'd be in scrums and mauls all day. But now he's got to go through such a thorough process to even perform close to his best. Yeah,
I'm the same. And I think most players will be. I think especially if you've had a few injuries, those are things that don't go away really. You have to warm up sort of every little part of your body, especially the things that you've injured, just to get to the point where you're like, right, I feel confident. I can now be physical and sprint and just go hard for everything. So, I get out, I do that. I probably have the same ritual, I suppose, or routine for my warm up. Around, I go to sort of the far sort of bottom corner, do a couple of running drills there, get warm. Then I do a bit of passing, bit of evasion with one of my teammates, and then you're into the team warm-up phase, because obviously everyone's got their individual stuff that you do, and then you come together as a team and you do all that. And so by the time the game rolls around, I feel ready, I feel primed. I've done everything I can.
And before running out the tunnel, what's it like at Murrayfield before a game versus England or Wales? Like, how loud's the changing room? What are you guys talking about?
Changing room's pretty quiet. Once you've come in from the warm-up, which has been quite intense, like the intensity goes up as you go, and we do a couple of bag hits right at the end of the warm-up, and that's like your most physical part. Then we walk in, obviously the crowd's getting behind us, they're cheering us on, we're all sort of geeing each other up, and then you've got sort of this like sort of 3 minutes of just calmness where guys are just getting prepped. So you've obviously got to get your jersey on. You put your anthem jacket on if it's cold. And you're in your head. You're just thinking, what is my first job here? And the captain will say, right, we're kicking off or we're receiving. We're going this way. This is the plan. Whether it's like, we're exiting straight off and we're kicking out or we're kicking long. And we know, like, you know exactly what the plan is because we've trained it all week, but they'll just give you that refresher. So you know, that's my first job. That is the map that I'm following. That is where I'm going to be. And you don't have to think about anything else. And then after that, you're in the game, and it's just muscle memory after that because we've trained so much, we've played so much that everything just comes naturally after that. And any system that you're in, you've trained it enough that you should know exactly what you need to do. So, it's that calmness in the change room, I find. And then obviously that gets a little bit louder as you walk out and you stand in the tunnel. The other team, you're standing next to each other. I tend not to look across unless I know someone.
Almost like laser focused.
Yeah, I'm kind of focused, but I'm not sort of fully, I wouldn't say I'm blinkered. I enjoy the moment as well. I think you've got to take it all in because, I mean, it's a short career. Like you don't know when your last game is going to be. So I like to just really take in the atmosphere and take in the moment and try to enjoy it. And then you walk out and that noise just hits you, which is amazing. And then you kind of go from there.
Yeah, so good. Are there any guys in the change room that are particularly loud and shouty compared to maybe your approach?
There'll be guys, I think it's generally forwards that will shout a bit. And you'll have a few boys that will maybe feel that they need to say something, whether it's just a refresher on, like, this is how we need to attack, or watch out for this, like, this is how we're defending. And especially after the captain said, we're kicking off this way, and if they like exit and a ball goes out, this will be our first play. Then you might have someone sort of saying, we need to do this and that.
Sometimes that's them speaking and thinking out loud as well to reassure themselves. Like I found with the podcast, for example, one of the best ways for me to learn some of the things that guests have taught me is to teach it on to the next guest and share it. Yeah. So in the same way in the change room, they're shouting like, we're going to exit long. They're just shouting that out. So they're like, okay, that's my plan. That's the game plan.
Yeah, that's 100% the best way to learn anything is to learn it so well that you can teach it. I've always thought that because and I think that about our game plan and stuff, and making sure that everyone's so aligned that you could tell anyone to go up in front of the meeting and explain what the game plan is going to be. It doesn't matter if you're the fly half or a prop. Like, you should know it so well that you could teach it to the rest of the team. I think that's so key, and you're absolutely right. That probably is what it is. It's the guy sort of reassuring himself while saying it out loud, just so everyone else is on the same page.
Yeah, sometimes the loudest guys are the most nervous rather than otherwise. And as you say, the true mark of an expert is to explain something in basic terms. The mark of a charlatan is to make something which should be simple sound complex.
Yeah, exactly. That is true. But I think, you're absolutely right. It probably is the guys who, not unsure, because none of us are really unsure, but just making sure.
Maybe you have reassurance.
You have that nervousness of like, right, do we all know what we're doing? And just saying it out loud so that people have the chance to be like, oh wait, what is that? But yeah, I think generally it is pretty calm. I don't know about other teams. You hear a lot about sort of guys who play in France, and you've got the French forwards sort of banging their head against the wall and just sort of shouting and swearing at each other, and that's how other guys will get pumped up for a game. And I think that different positions probably need different things. As a back, I don't need to be sort of as, I guess, psyched up as maybe a forward would need to be right at the start of the game anyway. So maybe they need a bit more of that sort of physical or loud, intense prep than I need to be calm, and maybe that's just an individual thing.
Yeah, definitely. And you'll find what works for you at this stage of your career. Over 50 tests for Scotland, you know what you're doing by now in terms of what good looks like for Huw before kickoff, and then during the game, you know what a state of arousal is helpful and which one's going to get you a yellow card. Yeah,
exactly. It's trying to find the right headspace, and not sort of going absolutely crazy and running around like a headless chicken because in the name of sort of intensity, but staying calm, but moving quickly.
Have you ever got it wrong in that regard?
Yeah, for sure. There's been times where, and I wouldn't say, it's probably not out of like anger or anything. It's probably out of panic or frustration that I would do something out of character. Maybe I've rushed out of the line to try and make a hit when I didn't need to. And it would have been better for me to stay in system, stay connected to in the defensive line, and it would have been fine. And you find that when a team is under pressure, there will be individuals who will try and solve it by themselves. And I think everyone's been guilty of it at some point in their career in different games. But for sure, I've had those moments where I've done something that straight afterwards, I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Because it's panic, frustration, because you're under pressure. And that's where an opposition team can take you. It can take you to a point where under fatigue, you make the wrong decision. But I think what I've been good at, or what I've got better at during my career, is noticing that and sort of bringing myself back to the right level and thinking, right, that wasn't the right thing to do. Park it, move on to the next job, and sort of staying focused and calm in that moment where at other times you could spiral out of control and then try and do more and more. And
it comes from experience and it comes from awareness. Awareness is the finish line with a lot of these things. You can't possibly fix something that's a weakness if you don't have an awareness of it. And you become aware through it happening a couple of times and being like, okay, next time I take this action instead of this action.
I think the biggest thing is training's huge for that. And coaches often say that they want you to make mistakes in training so that you're not doing it in a game. And obviously that's the biggest thing. And like that sounds normal and like the right thing to do, but you also don't want to make mistakes in training. But it's those kind of times where you need to train at an intensity, and coaches sometimes try to do this by making it more difficult for you by sort of your numbers down in a drill, or they take players off so it's harder to defend. You've got to cover more space, or that it's harder to attack because you've got less numbers. They make it more difficult, so you're making these decisions under more pressure, under more fatigue, and so that you're prepared for these moments in games.
Yeah, I had a psychologist in the podcast last year called Dr. Arya, and he used the phrase and he laughed. He was like, it's a bit cheesy. We try and bleed in training so we don't die in battle.
Yeah.
And if that helps bring it to life for you, then that's how to do it as well. In the same way, if I'm preparing for giving a talk on sales and communication, my practice run I'll do without any slides.
Yeah.
Because then when the slides are there in the day, I'm like, oh, this is so much easier. Whereas when I'm doing my practice run, I'm like, okay, remember what comes next. Remember what comes next. And then when the slide deck's there, I can relax down another level and focus even more on delivery. In the same way in training, if you're a man down and you're playing 15 versus 14, on game day when it's 15 versus 15, you're like, oh, I've got less space to cover now, or I've got an extra man to pass to.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably what training's all about, in essence, is that you want to train at a level where the actual test feels easier. And that can't always be the case because you can't do contact every day during the week. And so you have to have sort of a small hit of that where it feels really intense, but you're not injuring everyone in the team and completely doing yourself in before the weekend. So you have to kind of find the balance, but yeah, it's huge. I think that's what preseason's all about as well, is that just you do so much running, so much like time on feet that you're so fatigued, and then you do your skills at the end of the session because it's like, right, can we now pass? Can we now kick? Can we do all this stuff where we're completely drained? Because that's what it's going to be like at the end of the season when you're playing in the biggest games.
Yeah, I know Chris Duncan was over at the Warriors recently. Our episode with him is coming out quite soon, and he was saying when he went out to the America's top team to train for UFC, how cool it was to watch the guys drill after being heavily fatigued. So that's exactly what you're saying there. These guys are practicing their most complex skills and pins and holds or whatever terminology you want to use when they're feeling a bit fucked. So it's the exact same for you guys. Like, let's go balls to the wall and are running on whatever test we're doing, and then we're doing passing, or we're doing our skills, we're doing our kicking when we're feeling a bit fried.
Yeah, that's the most important time. That's the biggest test, is can you perform under pressure, under fatigue in the biggest game? Because if you've not trained that, then you're probably not going to step up to the plate when it really matters. And so, yeah, trying to find that in training and trying to simulate those moments of sort of panic and frustration and put players under that during training every week is so key. And then when it comes to the weekend, it feels second nature almost.
Yeah, and I think you can see that you've trained really hard because one of the things you used earlier on in the episode was big game player, and I think you've showed up so often. And one of the final questions I wanted to ask you, Huw, was if you reflect on your career up to this point, it's been a great success by all accounts, and there's hopefully lots more to come. What would need to happen for you to feel like it's been a success these next few years before you retire?
God, that's a tricky one. I want to play as long as I can. That's still probably the case, that I've not grown up and I don't know what I want to do for real. But yeah, I want to play as long as I can. I want to have success. So we won the URC last year, and that was an incredible feeling. And although sort of it doesn't define you, but just having that and being able to look back on success over a long season, especially, like winning one game is great, but being sort of the champions at the end of the season, you see how much work went into it. Being able, if we were to have that again, that would just be brilliant. And you want that every season. You want to win as much as you can. I think, yeah, in terms of individual sort of accolades, that's not really what I'm after. I think that comes with just playing well and playing with a good team. And then the enjoyment comes off the back of that. So the biggest reason I love rugby and have done from a very young age is just the enjoyment I get from it. And I hope that I never lose that. And I think if I was to look back on my career and know that I enjoyed every moment, that would probably be the most satisfying thing, is that it never became a job. It was never I was never so negative about it. And obviously there are highs and lows, injuries, not getting selected. Yeah. And there are things that get you down, but ultimately you keep coming back, and you want it more and more. And so, yeah, I think just the enjoyment, that's the main thing. And that's why we all do it. Anytime sort of, yesterday we had there was like a kids camp, just sort of training on the next pitch to us. And a few of us went over and we were sort of signing the balls and their shirts, and they were asking us a few questions. And one of the questions that always comes up is, what advice would you give to a player that wants to make it? And other than just sort of work hard, you just want to say, just enjoy it. Because if you don't enjoy it, you're probably not going to make it to the top level, because it won't be something that you want to get up and do every day. And so that's probably probably the main thing is that just that enjoyment factor, and that if I were to look back on my career and just be like, oh, that was the best.
When I was doing my research, I saw you shared a tweet from Sahil Bloom. He'd done like a thought experiment, and I had Sahil on the podcast a couple of years ago, and he talked about finding your zone of genius, which is where you have an element of talent, but you also will show up and do the work when others won't.
Yeah.
And there's a cheesy quote to that the tools will be heavy, but they'll feel light in your hands.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing just now. You're playing rugby and you love it. And of course, there's days where it's hard, you feel niggles, you get injured, but you'll continue to show up and do it because it gives you a positive feedback loop that you continue to want to chase and go after.
Yeah. Because I think it's the right thing for me. I think the guys that probably don't make it or sort of drop out at academy level or wherever, maybe it's not been for them because and often there's different reasons. Guys might have career-ending injuries, which is just awful. But like, there can just be a factor of like, yeah, it's just not for me. Or like, I don't want to do that work. Or I don't want to get up early. I don't want to do the recovery even. And so, yeah, I think the main thing is to just, I want it every day. And that's why I keep coming back. And I suppose that's what's made me get better and better throughout my career.
Yeah. It'd be remiss of me not to ask you about the Lions this summer. How much is that a goal? Like, how much are you focusing on that?
It's a huge goal. It's the pinnacle of rugby, really. For a home nations player, like that is, if you're getting picked in that Lions squad, you know that at that point you are one of the best players in your position in the UK, and if not, sort of the world. So, yeah, it's huge, and I think for everyone across sort of the UK, that is going to be a goal for a lot of players, and it's hugely competitive. And I think all that I can do is try and play the best that I can to put me in a position where I'm in the conversation. So yeah, it is a massive goal, and obviously I'm fully aware I'm not getting any younger. I've not been on a tour before, so this could potentially be my only chance. So yeah,
I think you're in great form, and I think Ringrose is probably the other 13 that's playing really well too. So one of two, hopefully, to go. And you've played fullback for Quins, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've played wing for Scotland as well, I think, haven't you?
I've played on the wing for Glasgow probably helps. And Scotland a bit. So yeah, I mean, I've got that versatility, but 13 is my position. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
I can't say too much about it. No, of course.
Yeah. All fingers crossed. And I think, as you've said, you're going to keep doing the work because you enjoy it. And if the result of following the process is that you end up with the outcome of the Lions, then you're going to seize that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, amazing. I've had tremendous fun today. Hope you have as well.
Yeah, I have.
If the listeners want to continue the conversation with you on socials, where should they head towards?
Probably best on Instagram. I am on X as well. I have the same handle on both. It's HRF Jones. So yeah, if you have any more questions, just fire them across on either platform and I'll try and get back to you.
Beautiful stuff. That'll be linked in the show notes. Thank you to you, Huw, and thank you to the listener. I'll be back to speak to you again very, very soon.